Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, more Hour of Devastation has been spoiled, and it's just almost too much, right? So, where do you want to start? Anywhere.
I can't believe our good fortune. What do you think about starting with the Hour cards? Like, we already spoke about Hour of Revelation a little bit, but what about the black one, Hour of Glory? 3 in a black, exile target creature. If that creature was a god, its controller reveals his or her hand and exiles all cards with it with the same name as that creature.
So the aesthetic of the Hour cards, like, we saw Hour of Revelation last week. It's a 6 casting cost card. Hour of Glory is like a 4 casting cost card. In a minute, we'll probably talk about Hour of Promise. They all feel to me like they cost, like, their base cost is a little bit high, like maybe about 1 high for this effect that you're getting. Like if you were going to get it on like a regular card, but then you just get a little bit extra, Hour of Glory, it's like, functionally, it's going to be a dark banishing 95% of the time, right? Like,
well, no. I mean, it exiles, and it hits black creatures.
Okay, a murder, I should say. Then
it's like the one from Silence the Believers.
I mean, obviously, this card is going to be played some, right? Because A, it exiles. B, it's an instant. C, because it exiles, it's got text against Gideon when it's attacking you as an indestructible creature. It's going to kill gods sometimes, right? Like, if you really had this question, like, how do I deal with the Scorpion God? How do I deal with, a Kefnet in play, something like that? There's not an overabundance of ways to deal with indestructible creatures. So I think that it'll be maybe. I don't see this as being a very popular main deck card. Certainly, if you're talking about certain color combinations like black-white, for example, you're going to have better things to do for this kind of effect. A little bit less mana, but I do think it would be likely that we'll see this card in sideboards.
Against what specifically?
You'll see these decks sometimes will play like 1 copy of an Anguished Unmaking, maybe like 1 copy main deck, 1 copy sideboard of an Anguished Unmaking.
No, what's it against though?
No, I'm just giving the context. Like, I think they play those kind of cards as catch-alls. I think this is the kind of card could be a catch-all for when you're playing against certain types of permanents that are not easy for you to destroy. Just as an example, when I was playing a black-red deck last year, I played Grip of Desolation in my sideboard just to fight against Gideon, right? I think this is an option just to fight against Gideon for certain color combinations, or, on the off chance you're playing against a god, it really is a pretty good answer to a god. Sometimes, at least. I mean, it's actually a reasonably mana-efficient answer to a god.
Like the standard gods?
Yeah.
Most of them are cheaper than this.
I think some of them... Like I played against the 4 casting cost red god last week. That's
not particularly efficient.
It killed me to death. No, the new gods, Locust God, Scarab God, Scorpion God, are all more expensive than a 4.
I mean, so... You think that all it's going to take for Oblivion Strike to get into people's sideboards is being an instant? Because the god text on this card is almost nothing.
Yeah, it's
because
very
most
little.
almost of the time, not all, but most of the time, the gods are not exactly the things that you stack up. I mean, they're legends anyway, right? And it's something, and I get it. It's just that it's pretty easy to make a list with like 1 Scorpion, the Scorpion God in it or whatever. This card is like an unbelievably unplayable common, but it's an instant instead of a sorcery, and that's enough to get you to think. That's enough for it to be in sideboards.
I don't think it's going to be a super popular card, but like, for example, this effect is not so off from Commit to Memory.
Yeah, it is. It's much more like a kill spell. It's just an instant Oblivion Strike. I don't think it's out of the question. I mean, I think this card could show up some, but I just don't.
I don't think it'll be super popular. I think it's gonna. I mean, if we use our bar of will this make top 8 of a Star City event or bigger? I think yes. You know, mana efficiency is like the most important thing to me in selecting cards, right? So this is almost 2 mana more than I ever want to play.
I get that. See, I'm just more about, improving my chances of winning the tournament.
I think that there are a lot of wayposts and KPIs that we can hit on the way to that princely goal, and that mana efficiency is one of the ones that I like to identify to use. This one, I think, is certainly not the most mana efficient option, but I do think that it is catch-all enough that it will see some play. I think likely to be one-ofs in a sideboard-ish, maybe like 1-1 in a rare case.
All right, well then let's pivot to the one you alluded to, Hour of Promise. Hour of Promise. 4 and a green sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. Then, if you control 3 or more deserts, create 2/2 black zombie creature tokens.
What a weird card, right? So this is a green card. It's 4 and a G. It depicts, is that a blue-red god? In the art, and
the Locst God.
Yeah, it depicts a blue-red god. It's a green card, and it makes 2 black zombie creatures. So it's got all kinds of stuff going on. So this card, like I think thematically, like I said, Hour of Glory is a little more expensive than a Murder, right? This is a little more expensive than an Explosive Vegetation. I think that. Like I'm just thinking the vast majority of the time, this is just an overcosted Explosive Vegetation.
What? Are you kidding me? You've got to be kidding me. Okay, so let's start. I mean, I just want to be sure. Are you just joking, or are you? Okay, it sounds like you're serious. Okay, so
it's land cards, not basic land cards.
Yes.
Oh well, I guess that I've revised my position already.
Okay. Now we're talking.
Okay.
Now we're talking.
It's still similar to an Explosive Vegetation.
It's not just gonna be a overcosted Explosive Vegetation.
Oh, man. Now that I have reread this card to not be basic lands, the desert part's really relevant. You could just have a couple of deserts in your deck, like a little more. Like if you could literally have 3 deserts in your deck, and every Hour of Promise in your deck becomes a hitter.
And so one of the nice things is if you just play enough deserts that you actually draw one, then any Hour of Promise can do the make 2 zombies, and then you're getting 4. You're getting a 4 for 1, right? Like you're getting a 2/2, a 2/2, and 2 land, right? But the deserts you go get are not nothing.
Yeah.
You see, you're getting ahead a little bit on the desert stuff because of the amount of selection of deserts that do things. Like specifically, I think that one of the most appealing deserts in this set is the black one that does pain. If Near Deadlands is a desert that taps for a colorless, or you can tap it and pay a life to get a black. And remember, it comes into play untapped. So it's tap for a colorless, or tap and pay a life to get a black. And you can tap it and pay 2 black and sacrifice a desert to put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature and opponent controls. Play this ability as a sorcery. So you can go, if you're playing like some deserts in your deck, you don't have to be like playing a million deserts, but you could easily be playing with 6 to 12. But you go get, if you just draw any one desert, you can search your deck, go get this If Near Deadlands plus one other desert that does something of your choice, which we can get to that in a minute. But and in particular, I really like Hostile Desert. Let me just jump to the chase. If you go get Hostile Desert, which is another untapped desert, tap for a colorless, or 2 and exile a land from your graveyard, it becomes a 3/4. Hostile Desert becomes a 3/4 elemental creature until end of turn. It's still a land. So if you go get If Near Deadlands and Hostile Desert, you can use if near deadlands and sacrifice either itself, or you can just sacrifice whatever other random desert you drew earlier. Put minus counters on whatever you like on one of your opponent's creatures, and then use that land, that desert in the graveyard as the land card in your graveyard to fuel hostile desert. So like you're getting a removal spell and another threat, and it's repeatable removal too. And you don't even have to just get if near deadlands. You can go get some of the other ones too, like Hash Ship Oasis, which it seems somewhat modest, but the fact that each turn you can pump something +3/+3, you're getting, it's like the green land from Odyssey way back, you know. And then the red one I don't think is necessarily the perfect one for this card, but you could potentially. I mean, it starts being kind of like a barbarian ring of sorts. But anyway, the point is
activation costs are pretty steep, I think, on some of these coming to play untapped colored deserts.
Yeah, you still want to play them though, man.
Yeah, because of the synergies. I got you.
So,
yeah, I think
of course.
I think that maybe the cycling. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I think the cycling deserts are also pretty good because you just to get lands into your graveyard. This is the kind of card that could potentially lead you to be playing a bunch of lands, and the ability to transform lands into other types of cards is potentially one that you might want if you might be flooding at the top end. Because Hour of Promise seems to me like the kind of card you want to play multiple copies of, right? Like if you have I don't necessarily think you're going to play 4. Maybe
I would start with 4. Absolutely.
I think I would start with 4 also. I'm just saying not necessarily end with 4 because you don't always play like 4 Explosive Vegetations for sake of argument, right?
But this card is not like Explosive Vegetation, man. Explosive Vegetation has never blocked so well.
I think you're underrating how good of a threat card this is by saying it never blocks so well. This is like a 4/4 body across 4/4 creature across 2 bodies for 5 mana that also drew 2 additional cards. That's put them into play. That's pretty substantial, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Also, even if those blockers don't kill, like they're untapped zombies, you can block with them. All I want to do is chump block because, like for instance, you can Hour of Promise and go get 2 of the Eldrazi land.
Yeah, I mean, my reading of this card is obviously so widened from when I removed the word basic from my imaginary reading of this. I'm not sure how far you can get on it. It seems very powerful to me, though.
But I mean, like, if you just go search for 2 Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, you already had 5 mana to cast this thing. Now you're up to 7, which is exactly the perfect amount to make sure that Shrine of the Forsaken God is active. You have 9, and then you just play a land for your turn when you untap, and you drop Ulamog.
I mean, I was going kind of even more simply, right?
Simply, this is a 1-card combo.
Well, you're talking even about more like playing the Black Desert, for example. I'm just thinking about using this as a mana ramp spell that's also a color fixer. 5 to 7 or 5 to 8 is an available thing by fixing colors, and you can just cast Nicol Bolas, for example. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you want to go with this. I think you want to go higher. You want to go up to Eldrazi.
So you want to go big.
The fact that you can just go get 2 Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, and this card is effectively a quadruple Explosive Vegetation.
That is powerful.
What about if you just go get a Sanctum of Ugin and something else? Or what if you go get Mortuary Mire and something else? Right? Like, the fact that you can just Sylvan Scrying for 2 different lands and put them into play, you might not play a billion deserts because you might just be wanting to cast these Ulamogs burning a hole in your pocket.
Oh, yeah. I think you could easily have 3 deserts in your deck and have and just to play the minimum. Because especially if you have ways to search for them, like you play like ChefNet Monitor, or the first Hour of Promise can get you the other 2 deserts, right? Like that's if you care to go that direction.
Yeah, or plus traverse the Ulvenwild.
Oh, of course.
Like it's not going to go get one, or right off top at the beginning or whatever. But sometimes if you want to just get extra, I plus obviously like traverse the Ulvenwild is like such an easy fit into some kind of an Eldrazi deck. I really think. I mean, you got to remember too. This card was made with Eldrazi not being. It wasn't Battle for Zendikar wasn't supposed to be legal. The interaction with Ulamog and Shrine of the Forsaken Gods was not supposed to be standard legal. Here's another interaction for you. How about Hour of Promise with Tireless Tracker?
Oh, in.
And so actually that sort of speaks to some of the reason I think you've got to be careful with how many of the cycling deserts you play. Because I think that once you're playing like 4 Evolving Wild and some amount of Hissing Quagmire, like let's say you're playing green-black, and maybe you don't want black at all because it could be very likely that the zombies, you're not even using them here. But if you're playing Evolving Wild in another color, you want to be careful about how many tap lands you end up actually playing in. Too many of these deserts, you know.
Oh, I agree. I actually think this might be a window to open for green-blue, which is something we haven't seen in a while. Like dedicated rampy cards that would help you get to maybe that green-blue Nissa. Like that's a card that seems like it has a lot of promise, but hasn't been played in a deck yet.
Well, the green-blue Nissa has seen a little bit of play in some of the Teamer Planeswalker decks that were sort of like Felidar Guardian energy decks, but they didn't end up doing the Marvel thing. I think that's about the most we've seen of it so far. But I actually think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that that new Nissa got a really interesting new complement with it, like a card that just Nissa is going to be such a great supporting cast member for this new combo deck. Reason to Believe. Reason to Believe is the blue sorcery Scry 3. And then it has an Aftermath sorcery of 4 and a green. Aftermath, look at the top card of your library. You may put it onto the battlefield if it's a creature card. If you don't, put it into your hand. So Reason to Believe, you for 1 mana are getting Scry 3, which is not enough, in my opinion, to be worth a full card. But you're not paying a full card because you're also getting this sick combo piece in your graveyard. And in theory, you can cast Reason to Believe at a turn in which if any of the top 3 cards of your deck are the Ulamog or whatever giant thing you want, then you can just cast Believe immediately. Or you could cast Believe on the next turn and just put the card 1 down from your scry.
Yeah, like on a turn 6 situation, you could just like lottery winner into the other side.
Well, and if you play Reason on turn 2, you can be very sure your Nissa on turn 3 is going to hit perfect. Or if you Nissa and Scry, now you can know when to believe. And Reason to Believe works so well with some giant Eldrazi-esque sort of ramping strategy. And this is a fantastic payoff for all the extra mana. Like, for instance, you can pay 5 for Hour of Promise, go get 2 land, untap, drop a land, that's 8. You can just drop Nissa for 6 right there. You know, like, you're getting close to doing some, like, fireball, kill, all the way out type of plays at times, you know?
Sure.
Like, I don't know. That's just I think that Reason to Believe and Nissa, there's something going there. You know, like, and there's this gap a little bit from Aetherworks Marvel being banned, you know?
Yep.
So Hour of Promise, I think there's more going on with this, too. I picture Hour of Promise, and then just go get 2 of the Sunscorched Desert. The fact that the Sunscorched Desert is like extra damage means that you can just do 2 points of damage with haste in addition to your 4 for 1.
So the way that it stacks is if you have a desert in play and then you go get 2 Sunscorched Deserts, nug the opponent for 2, then you also will get the 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, right?
Right.
Well, that's really cool. So with
here's another one.
You only have to have 1 desert in play to line this all up.
Right. And now here's another thing. Imagine you have at least 2 deserts already in play. You can Hour of Promise, go get a Westvale Abbey and another desert, and your Westvale Abbey, you're making progress on it because you just got these 2 zombies also. You know, like the zombies are 40% of the way through for ultimating the Westvale Abbey.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's so many cool utility lands that you can play in Standard. Anything from Gaia Reach Sanitarium to, is it Handwear Battlements?
Yeah.
Like, that all these cards are actually, like, fairly mana efficient and have text on them. They just don't happen to be played in any decks right now.
Well, it's so different when you can tutor them up at the right spots.
Yeah.
And in fact, once you have like a little bit of a toolbox, it starts changing the equation for the that green creature that God, what is he? The 6-cost guy.
The Hydra?
You know him. Exactly.
Yeah, I love that Hydra.
Like, once you have this toolbox, you get extra value out of the Hydra. Because the Hydra just wants you to have a nice assortment of creature, of lands to do something in a sweet moment. And if you're already doing it because of having this, I mean, and then this card helps ramp you into that and make the Hydra big enough to be like a very formidable threat.
One of the things I think is cool about this card is, you remember, like, I have an unnatural love for cards like Indrik Stomphowler and Thalia's Lancers. Of
course.
This is basically like 2 Thalia's Lancers, right? Like, it's 5 casting costs, which is the same as Thalia's Lancers, 4/4 in body, which is the same as Thalia's Lancers, but instead of getting 1 extra card, you get 2, and they go straight into play. It's actually really, I think it's way better than I originally thought, because obviously when I thought it was only basic lands, I didn't, for example, put together that you could just get the deserts that enabled the zombies.
The fact, like, the fact that you are putting part of the payment, so to speak, of this card is that the lands are getting put into play tapped already. So whenever you go get tap lands, you're cheating the system in a way.
Yep, absolutely.
You're not having to pay that drawback. So, like, I don't know. I think this is a very exciting card.
What is the blue, like, kind of utility land from Battle for Zendikar? Locks things down, right?
Yeah.
Does it tap them, or is it they just don't untap?
They just don't untap them. Unfortunately, it doesn't tap them, or else, because
that would be insanity if you could actually tap them.
That would be sweet, but no. Here's another possibility. What if you use this in Modern to go get whichever 2 pieces of the Tron you're missing? Is that just crazy?
It's a little.
Might be crazy.
I think it's expensive.
What if you go get 2 Valakutes?
Oh, that's a little hotter. So straight into play. So implication that you're at least on 7.
What if you go get like 2 of the green Karus in your Amulet of Vigor style deck?
Oh, so it's just kind of extra Primeval Titans?
Yeah. It's Primeval Titan without the Titan.
I don't think you'll be playing that as a 4 of in that deck. I think you'll get maybe 1 or 2 extra.
No, I don't know. If you could play it at all, if a card's Modern playable at all, it's interesting.
I think it might be Modern playable in that context. I don't think in Tron.
All right. What about going to go get Lumbering Falls as one of your 2 lands?
Of course.
That's
like my baseline is that I have some number. I mean, if I'm playing the blue-green version, I mean, I have probably some number of Lumbering Falls, maybe all 4. But it's like you said with the Tireless Tracker examples, you can only play so many come into play tapped lands. Especially if you have expensive cards. Like, the worst situation you can get yourself in is you're desperate to draw, land N in order to keep your life going, and then land N comes into play tapped, right? You have 4 in play, or you really need to hit Hour of Promise, but it came into play tapped. You need to really kind of modulate how many come into play tapped versus come into play untapped lands you have because of that.
That's part of the reason why it's so important to have some deserts that come into play untapped.
Fully agree.
Yep. Blighted Fen, another interesting one.
Sure.
And potentially killing other people's Eldrazi. Mirror Pool. One of my
if we're talking about
favorites.
The big Hydra, of course you got Mirror Pool, right? Those guys. Well,
you got to draw the line somewhere. I mean, there's too many sweet lands to play them all. You know what I mean? Like what if you're using this in a Sheffet Monitor deck, which is something you alluded to already? But the ability of Sheffet Monitor, I think Sheffet Monitor being able to search up these deserts that have action, like the action deserts with Sheffet Monitor, that's a big game. Plus, the Sheffet Monitor ramps perfect into the Hydra itself.
I agree with all those points. And in fact, I think that you might be playing Chef at Monitor, Hour of Promise, the Hydra, and Hour of Revelation together. What do you think about Hour of Promise and Hour of Revelation in the same deck? Like, if you have all this utility coming from your lands, and you're like all about searching up special lands, and Hour of Revelation destroys non-lands, well, what do you think?
I don't know, man. Triple white.
Casting, it's not going to be hard. The Hour of Promise, could you just cast it and get 3 whites? You know, as long if you have 1 white, you'll have 3 whites the next turn. You don't think?
No, I mean maybe. I just want to be casting stuff like Ulamogs and stuff, man. I don't know that I want to dink around with sweeping the board. Maybe I do. I could imagine it. I don't know what the best other color is. My first guess, though, is that you want to play only 2 colors. 2 or 1, probably 2.
Yeah, maybe 2. Enough to support some of those blue cards, and then maybe to support, just for sake of argument, like Dispels or something, you know, so you can cast a big spell and have Dispel backup, and just hard cast those Ulamogs like you were saying. I think that's possible.
Walking Ballista is another nice one. Walking Ballista in a deck that is going from 5 straight into 8, 5 straight into 8, and the fact that you can use, like when you cast, or when you have Shrine of the Forsaken God, you can use it to help cast your Walking Ballista, like even harder.
Sure.
And then Walking Ballista can be a 2-mana play that has like a meaningful impact, but then later a super mana sink for taking advantage of just having this incredibly, you know, wide-reaching mana base.
I think that your idea with Mortuary Mire actually sounds better and better, even if you're not using it for its color. You're probably just in the situation where you have threats that are going to the graveyard that are really meaningful, and you know, getting them back for free or nearly for free with a card like Hour of Promise is probably pretty cool.
It's kind of interesting that if you search up 2 Ipnu Rivulets, on the next turn you can just start slamming mill your opponent. It's a little expensive, a little unwieldy, but if there's some kind of a turbo mill strategy.
So Ipnu Rivulet is one of the new deserts, the blue desert that comes into play untapped. It has the abilities tap for a colorless, tap and pay 1 life, add blue, or 1 in a blue, sacrifice a desert. Target player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Yes, I think that is expensive. I think it's just expensive to keep going, right? Like, just to get started is okay, and you probably have a ton of fuel if you're casting 5s into 7s and 8s, but you have to have a steady stream of deserts in order to kind of finish the play.
One other aspect I wanted to note on Hour of Promise is the zombie aspect. I wonder if there's some way to take advantage of the zombie tribal in some way without being like a full-on dedicated zombie deck. Like, for instance, might you end up with Liliana's Majesty or something, getting a little extra mileage?
I think that's a stretch. I think that, yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time imagining a zombie deck that wants to tap 5 for a green sorcery, or a deck that's good at tapping 5 for a green sorcery, deigning to play with a lot of dedicated small zombies.
Fair enough. What about here's another Hour card, Hour of Eternity. XX blue sorcery. Exile X target creatures from your graveyard. For each card exiled this way, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie.
Wow, it's a very complicated card. So, to begin with, for this card to be doing very much of anything, you've got to have creatures in your graveyard. And in fact, for it to get a lot of text, you have to have multiple creatures, right? So if you're only doing 1, X equals 1, so it's 5 casting cost, basically exile a creature from your graveyard, make 1 4/4 black zombie, right? That's not exciting.
Well, no, it's not a 4/4 black zombie. It's a copy of that card.
Oh, okay.
Except it's a 4/4 black zombie. So you get all the triggers, and you get all the text, you get all the abilities.
Well, you don't get the cast trigger. For example, if it's a cast trigger creature, right?
You don't get a cast trigger. You don't get Ulamog's trigger or whatever.
But if you got Ulamog, it would be a 4/4 black zombie Ulamog that had his other abilities, though, like his
indestructible and milling. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
But you would also, if you, for instance, if you play Hour of Eternity and for 7, you could make 2 Torrential Gearhulks.
And you'd get their triggers.
Right.
That's pretty hot. What do you think about this card? I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around when I would want it. For example, I think Hour of Glory, I can imagine situations where I'd want it much more easily than Hour of Eternity right now.
Hour of Eternity, I think you really got to be in for abusing it. Because 5 mana for a 4/4, no thank you. Not in constructed. 7 mana for 2 4/4s, not even close. Not even close. And it doesn't get better as you scale up. So in order for this card to be good, you have got to be abusing it. And I think that the key to abusing it is finding some really, really... There's primarily 2 different ways you can do it. You can either find something that has like some super awesome triggers, right, where you're like not caring about the body as much, or you can find something that has super awesome multipliers that by you doing this, you're making it much bigger. You know, like if you exile some 1/1s with double strike and lifelink, then it gets better when you do this. Like if you're making 4/4 copies of cards with just, like for instance, picture, because you don't have to have cast the other card, but picture you were making, part of the problem is haste and double damage. You need so much in order to even be. The big thing I would think is Razaketh the Foul-Blooded, which is 5 black, black, black. It's the new, I guess, it's 5 black, 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 8/8 flying trample. It's a legendary demon. It also has the ability of pay 2 life and sacrifice another creature, search your library for a card, put that card in your hand, then shuffle your library.
Yeah, are you saying that if you were using Hour of Eternity to get a creature like this, you'd have at least a savings?
Like, if you have Razaketh the Foul-Blooded in your graveyard, at the very least, this card is a 5-mana reanimation spell.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it's only making Razaketh a 4/4 instead of an 8/8. But Razaketh has a good enough ability. If you had some kind of a deck that's like consistently playing this card for 7 mana, I don't know. I think Hour of Eternity, plus it's even triple blue. It's possible, but I'm not seeing it yet. I'd rather Razaketh the Foul-Blooded with Liliana.
Yeah. Do you think Razaketh is good? I think he's...
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Free Demonic Tutor?
What do you mean free? You can do this as much as you want.
Well, yeah. 2 life at a time.
Right.
One Sapperling at a time.
Isn't this card, like, really... I mean, isn't this like the new Grizzlebrand?
They're very different, right? Like,
they're not that different.
A Grizzlebrand just does a whole bunch of work for you, whether or not you have an additional resource. Razaketh does some work for you, no doubt, but you need to have, maybe not necessarily plentiful resources, but you gotta have something.
You have to have one other creature.
Like, I think it also depends on how you got Razaketh into play. Like, if you're hard casting Razaketh, for sake of argument, like, you know, how much space do you have left to even take advantage of this demonic tutor ability?
I'm not just talking about hard casting Razaketh. I'm not talking about hard casting Grizzlebrand either. I'm saying that when you have Razaketh in play, you win. Right? Like, you can demonic tutor for 0 mana.
A bunch of times.
Yeah. You don't think you can find a way to do some dope stuff with 0 mana demonic tutors?
Of course I can.
Like, what if you tutored up a card that gave you more resources? I mean, like...
You like mana? Because I'll need some mana to accomplish whatever you want. Imagine you're playing
some kind of a... what if you're playing some kind of a... like, you've got the green enchantment that's like the key to all magical Christmas land scenarios. The 1 and a green from the Shadows block. You know what I mean? The Cryptolith Rites? Is that Cryptolith? If you have Cryptolith Rites, you've got all. So first of all, Cryptolith Rites, you don't even have to reanimate. You can just cast Razaketh with Cryptolith Rites, and then you have all these creatures in play, right?
Oh, you could just. I guess you could just finish off like a Brood Monitor combo just with what you had, right?
Right.
All right.
You sack the Brood Monitor or whatever. You sack the thing that makes a Thrall, whatever you want. Sacrifice the thing. Now you have a new untapped guy to make some mana, and you get to Demonic Tutor. Go Demonic Tutor for something that makes a profit. Like, for instance, the thing that lets you, 1/1 that dies into a 1/1. That's 2 Demonic Tutors.
I got you.
You should just win when you play Razaketh. This is I don't know. This card is, like, weird. This is, like, I don't know. I think that people are not realizing how much. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not the exact same because obviously Grizzlebrand, you don't even have to have another creature. And in some contexts, another creature is a tall order. But I think that Razaketh is it might be terrible because it's a weirdo, right? Like these giant weird condition creatures are very subject to the ways to abuse them. But Razaketh might be good in Modern or Legacy. You win the game when you do this. For instance, picture you're playing Modern or Legacy or whatever. Do you think you can't go find something in your deck now that you're just tutoring for 0 mana Demonic Tutors? You don't think you can just go find something in your deck that's going to be good in a spot like this?
Well, of course, you can build your deck in such a way where you just have one copy of all the things you need to complete your achievement list, right? Like, I have one of these, and then Razaketh gets the ball rolling,
and you probably need
them all.
And you might need 3 or 4 other cards to help you curve up and ramp up so that you can just drop Razaketh and then immediately win. Because you might need some cards to help start, net you mana. That's part of the equation. But anyway, I'm not that optimistic of Hour of Promise or Hour of Eternity. I mean, Hour of Promise, I'm in. Hour of Eternity, that one can wait.
Can wait an hour.
Yeah. Which, now this brings us to red. Why do we not have the red hour? No. All right. I guess we wait. There is a different red card, though. Curious your thoughts on Imminent Doom. 2 in a red enchantment. Imminent Doom enters the battlefield with a Doom counter. Whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost equal to the number of Doom counters on Imminent Doom deals that much damage to target creature or player, then put a Doom counter on Imminent Doom.
Well, that's pretty cool. Right, so you play it for 2 in a red. It comes in with 1 counter on it. So you cast a Magma Spray or a Shock or something. Goes up to 2 counters. And you can just keep going, right? You can scale this up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's...
And it hits creatures or players.
Yeah. This is...
Now we can go even better. You're at level 1. Here, let's go 1 step higher. All the different... for instance, what if you have this card with Consign to Oblivion? Consign to Oblivion is 1 in a blue, instant, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So it's already just displace, right? But then on the backside, it has an Aftermath sorcery, 4 in a black, Aftermath, target opponent discards 2 cards. So Consign to Oblivion counts as your 2, but it also counts as your 5. And you could play some other, for instance, Never Return. Never is your 3, and then Return is your 4. So, you can use the Aftermath cards as 2 different numbers on the curve.
That's cool.
Now, here's another thing. The Consign part of Consign to Oblivion, Consign can be used if you ever get this up too high. You can bounce it back to your hand and bring the amount of Doom back down to a more manageable level so that you can, start doing damage again. Let's say that you end up doing 1 damage to a creature, then 2 damage to a creature, then 3 damage. Next thing you know, you're at 5, and you're like, well, I don't have 6s in my deck.
You don't have the right casting cost.
So you bounce it, and you bring it back, and you get to play it again and start over.
The things I like about this card are that if you have the right cards in your hand, you can do it multiple times per turn, which I think is pretty cool.
And with haste.
Yeah, keep chaining it up and damaging the opponent, or killing the creatures, whatever. The thing I don't like about it is what it asks you to have is so specific. Most of the decks that we tend to see in Standard, or actually for that matter, Modern and Legacy, the vast majority of those decks just have the same casting costs over and over again. They have 1s and 2s for the most part. And if you really want to take advantage of Imminent Doom, I think you need to have a variety of casting costs going north.
Oh, but
like you could just have the wrong ones. That's the thing.
What about Cut to Ribbons?
I love Cut to Ribbons.
Now, what about Heaven to Earth?
Wow, I think Cut to Ribbons is just a good enough answer, Patrick. It's just what.
Yeah, Cut to Ribbons is the A+ awesome way because it's already on colors for the stuff. I just think Heaven to Earth is at least interesting too because it's two different parts that can both be whatever cost you want. But when you have Cut to Ribbons, it's also nice that Ribbons not only is whatever number you want, but it's more life loss. So you can like Ribbons for 5 and dome them for 7, and that's 12.
Yeah.
Exactly. They feed into each other. I think Cut to Ribbons is so good with this card. What do you think? Is this more of a control card, a combo card, a burn deck card? Imminent Doom? Yep.
I think it's its own deck card, right? Like I don't think a beatdown deck wants to play.
I think it's a card for one of those slower burn decks. That's got it plays like a little bit of an interaction game against certain people, but it's like hitting you with some big heavy hitter hard. It's got big burn spells too. Yeah. Where you're because I think that it worked you're Shock and Cut to Ribbons and Imminent Doom and Collective Defiance, and you're just doing all this damage to everything, right? And sometimes you're just going upstairs, but sometimes you take over, and Imminent Doom can help be a part of the controlling plan, or it can just go upstairs, or it can just help make your burn spells do even more damage. And then I think that I do think that it'd be kind of nice. I don't know if you want to play 3 colors, but I think it'd be kind of nice to get Consigned to Oblivion in there. I think Consigned to Oblivion is a very exciting card anyway.
So you're hot on Imminent Doom?
No, I'm hot on Consigned to Oblivion. I'm interested on Imminent Doom, but I think it's more fringe.
Yeah.
Consigned to Oblivion, however, I think Consigned to Oblivion is the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the consign part is so powerful. It's 1 in a blue for an instant return target.
That's so close.
Non-land permanents, and it's there, right? That card has been there. It's not super popular, but people have just played it, right?
And an expensive Mind Rot is a great option to have on the backside when you have a bounce spell.
Well, it's free, right? It's not rotting in your hand. Then rot them from the graveyard.
Besides, man, I'm just in for Grixis. I'm glad finally Grixis is getting its due. Crumbling Necropolis. How exciting, how crazy is that? Crumbling Necropolis is in this set.
Really? I hadn't seen that.
That's it enters the battlefield tapped to get a blue, a black, or a red.
I know what a Crumbling Necropolis is, right?
Yes.
I've played it many times. I didn't realize it was in the set, that's all.
That changes everything. I mean, the things you can do with Crumbling Necropolis for powering a Grixis mana base.
Is it alone?
Yes. Yep, it's alone. Nico Bolas deserves to rule alone. He is the God Pharaoh.
What's the name? Crumbling Necropolis is actually part of one of my favorite deck design stories. What's the name of the Jund one? Savage Lands?
Yeah, it is.
So I played a black-red Lightning Beatdown deck once, and it just wanted another set of dual lands. So I asked Josh Ravitz for Savage Lands, and he gave me Crumbling Necropolis instead. And I'm like, yo, this doesn't do the same thing. And he's just like, it does exactly the same thing as Savage Lands in your deck. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't tap for green for Bogart Ramgang. Bogart Ramgang is green or red casting cost in each of its 3 pips. It's like, well, you can just pay all the red. But the thing that was important about it is I was playing a beatdown deck, and if you're playing Savage Lands, you play it on the first turn because you don't have a 1-drop, or you just need to play the Savage Lands instead of one of your other lands on turn 1. Your opponent doesn't know what's going to happen, right? But if you're in the range of a Savage Lands, it could still be like a Putrid Leech kind of beatdown opening, right? Maybe Putrid Leech into Bogart Ramgang, which is a card that black-red deck was playing anyway. When they're playing Crumbling Necropolis on turn 1, you're calibrating them to like red fairies or Grixis control or 5-color control. So they're from turn 1, they're just maybe a little bit off. You know, maybe they'll make a play that they might have not made if you had showed them Savage Lands instead. Just a small thing, but it ended up being pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, the misdirection from the Savage Land dual lane was always kind of interesting. What do you think about the consign to Oblivion in a Grixis deck? Because, like, 4 Crumbling Necropolis is really going to help fuel the ability to play a pretty stellar mana base. Like, once you can play 4 Crumbling Necropolis, it really comes together for you with Grixis.
So, I think there's, like, this kind of, there's word Grixis, right? Blue, red, black. And then there's this kind of, I don't want to say baggage, but maybe connotation that comes with being blue, red, and black, which is 2 different of those colors are elite at point removal, especially at instant, and the other one is blue. And you can have, well, it's just like maybe a very true control deck, or maybe it's a true control deck that has, very big spells associated with it, either a Nicol Bolas himself or a Cruel Ultimatum, something like that. We've also seen other kinds of decks that are those color combinations, but not what you think of as a control deck in these very control-ish colors. The current Death Shadow deck in Modern would be an example of that. I mean this in a really generous sense. Do you remember back in Invasion Block, you made so many PTQ top 8s with that Blazing Spectre deck? Blazing Spectre, yeah. Recoil. It was Blazing Spectre Recoil, right? That was the... Right. So I played that deck a lot out of block, and
Void.
Yeah, and I was just, Patrick was always making top 8 with this deck, and I played it at the Invitational, and in pick your own block or whatever, everyone could pick up. I picked Invasion Block to play your deck. And Zvi said a really interesting thing. He's like, you're playing the Rock. And I'm like, oh, the Rock is black and green. The philosophy of that Grixis deck was very much the Rock, not very much what you think of as control colors, black, red, blue control colors. And I think that the Consigned Oblivion fits into that mode of a Grixis tradition, which is like much grindier, less control-y. Like this isn't a card that, in my mind, is just like either big. Maybe you're setting up for big spell. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to end on Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh.
So you're like, like you use this to just, Consign is a great time buying card, right? Like I boomeranged all over the place for years. It does similar thing to the boomerang, and then actually pays back some card advantage later. And I guess you're softening them up to land Nicol Bolas anyway.
And you're going after their hand anyway, too. Remember, you've got access to everything from Doomfall if you want, or Dark Intimations if you want, or any of that stuff. And when you drop Nicol Bolas, you take the last 2 cards from their hand, and that's it. And remember, Chandra to Nicol Bolas is a hell of a curve. Sure. That's just clean living.
Or the opposite of clean.
How about Consigned to Oblivion in a blue-black deck with some Liliana the Last Hopes and or Liliana the Death's Majesty?
I would not be surprised.
Or Master of Death or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, no, if we saw something like that. The reason being, Consign is just a great card to, no matter how big the opponent's threat creature is, just to keep Planeswalkers alive, right?
Yep.
Like,
and if you ever mill Oblivion, it's like a free card.
Bonus, yeah, absolutely. Besides which, Oblivion is just synergistic with some of those abilities that
right.
Liliana is going.
And it's worth noting that Liliana isn't just like a good way to reanimate your Razaketh. It's also a good source of zombies to help fuel Razaketh's ability.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's cool about Consigned Oblivion is like on turn 4, you just have pass with 4 mana open, maybe use 2 of that mana to like essence scatter your opponent's play, consign whatever they'd played in the previous turn, and then just untap and play your 5th land and oblivion them. Just super simple setup.
Yeah, sure. What do you think of Claim to Fame? Claim to Fame is a different reanimation spell. But it's an Aftermath one as well. It's black sorcery. Return target creature with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then it has Aftermath, which is a Aftermath of Fame sorcery. 1 in a red. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn.
I think this card is going to be unbelievable, especially in larger formats. Like, really strong. You can claim a Death Shadow, for example, and then immediately, like, you have 3 mana open, you can, like, claim and then fame it and land lethal, from 10+, with no creature in play. And there are a number of creatures that are good enough. And obviously, Claim to Fame is in the right colors for Death Shadow, but you could probably do similar stuff with stuff that costs 2 or less, like a Tarmogoyf, etc., etc. I think this card is going to be really good.
I think you're 100% right. I think this card is going to be really good, particularly in powered formats. What do you think about this with Kiln Fiend?
Wow.
It's both sides, too.
The first thing I thought is, do you have a Kiln Fiend in play already? Like, do they have 2? And then, the first one triggers off a claim, and they both trigger off a fame, and it's just, I don't know, might be there.
This card with literally just Tarmogoyf.
Yeah,
Grimflare.
This card isn't exactly in the right colors to work with a lot of these, whatever litany of key creatures on 2 that you want to talk about for modern play. It's right there. Like, what if you're just rebuying your Dark Confidant and then you don't worry about faming it for a while, or faming anything for a while? Like, they just killed your Dark Confidant, you just get it back. Okay.
What if you get back a Snapcaster Mage? You don't even have to Snapcaster Mage the claim. Save it. Use the Snapcaster on something else, like a Lightning Bolt. Because you want to use Fame. You don't want to flashback claim.
Yeah.
But you can just claim to Fame. People already play the cycling one. And this is, like, better than that. I don't know. This card's really great. But how about in Standard? Can you do this in Standard? Because I think we're both on the same page. This card is straight into Modern and Legacy. But what about in Standard?
Well, Scrap Heap Scrounger can take care of himself. So, maybe not there. I don't think Mardu has any creatures I would want to do this with. If you're talking about, maybe there's Jund though, right? So I would love to get the Winding Constrictor back. That's a lightning rod in Standard. Then some versions of Black Green have a red splash for unlicensed disintegration or whatnot. I don't know. Obviously, the creatures are so much less good in Standard.
Yeah, I think you got to have some kind of combos. You got to be doing something to get a multiplier, because I just don't think that the creatures are good enough on the whole to be worth. You can't use this just proactively as much, but it might still just be worth it on the value. I don't know. This card just seems so good to me that it might just be worth just doing in moderation. I mean, probably not, but for instance, let's say you're playing some kind of a Noose Constrictor deck with with Flameblade Adept. Right? Like, if you're playing some kind of a Noose Constrictor deck, or some kind of a deck that can loot away some of its creatures or whatever, this is a 1 mana 2-cost card, right? Like, you're getting the card, but then you also have the haste card in your graveyard as an extra bonus. I don't know, that seems like it certainly has a high ceiling, very high ceiling.
Imagine you're playing a Noose Constrictor deck, or a Stromkirk. What's his name? Stromkirk.
Flameblade Adept.
No, it's just like the Black Vampire. It doesn't matter. You just discard it, right? Noose Constrictor's 2/2. Discard it. He's 3/3. Flat. Like, you just play it, right? You have 4 mana for sake of argument. Discard it. He's 3/3, and then flashback Fame, and you just 5/3. Just get in. Like, I think that's an available play to a Noose Constrictor deck, right? Take 5.
Plus, realistically, you could go discard some 2-drop, and then cast this, get your 2-drop back, and then flash this back and make your 2-drop attack.
Absolutely.
If you do all that, now you're talking about like 7 damage right there, and you're committing another threat to the board. It's probably not going to be good enough, but another little interesting sideways synergy to keep in mind. The wolf, the wolf from Shadows, that's red, the double striking one.
Well, anything double striking, I think, you have to take a double take on Fame.
Yeah, because if you have Scourge Wolf and you use this when your Scourge Wolf has Delirium, or when you have Delirium, then you're just like surprised out of nowhere hitting your opponent for 8. You're adding an extra 8 to the board, you know? So continuing, I guess, in the vein of these Aftermath cards, what do you think of Farm to Market? So 2 and a white. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
All right, Farm to Market. Farm side is 2 and a white for an instant. Destroy target attacking or blocking creature. Market is 2 and a blue for a sorcery with Aftermath. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Not feeling it, Patrick.
What is it you don't feel about this one?
I hate both sides.
Well, so 2 and a white, destroy target attacking or blocking creature. You would pay 2 for that ability.
I might not be happy about it.
Yeah, but no, I'm saying there's times where you've paid 2 for that ability, and all it could kill was an attacker, like Immolating Glare.
Sure.
So the fact that this can kill an attacker or a blocker, and it costs 3, and then afterwards you have this, instead of a clue that you're left with, you get this clue that costs 3 to use, but instead of drawing 1 card, you draw 2 and then discard 2. Yeah, I'm not that big into it either. I think that the problem is you're just glutted at 3. I don't think this card's terrible. It might be good enough. It's slightly weaker than some of the other options, and you're just super saturated at the 3 spot. There's just so many good options. That's not what blue-white needs. It might be enough that it's worth playing because of other reasons, but like there's so many incredible 3-cost cards like Supreme Will and Stasis Snare and Spell Queller, and there's it's hard to want to play something so mediocre. What about Red Murder? Struggle to Survive.
So, Struggle to Survive.
The Scred of Your Dreams. Struggle to Survive is 2 and a red instant. So Struggle deals damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control. And that's an instant. And then the backside, the Aftermath part, is a sorcery for 1 and a green. Each player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library.
All right, so Struggle is generously the Scred of my dreams. Scred was R for a similar effect. It just dealt for every snow-covered land you had in play. This, obviously, you don't have to play snow-covered lands. It's wildly less efficient, though, right? Like, one of the reasons Scred was so good, which is a little counterintuitive because it was so cheap, and then it's dealing damage equal to having potentially a lot of land in play. I think this is okay. The struggle side it's conditional, right? The
struggle is real.
You don't always. Yeah, the struggle is real. You don't. You don't always. Get to kill. Look, just for sake of argument, say you're mana screwed, right? Nobody likes being mana screwed.
For the sake of argument, I'm mana screwed.
Sake of argument, it's one of the 53% of the time I'm mana screwed. Like, it just doesn't do very much, right? You paid like the
does at least cost. 3 damage for 3.
It does the full cost of a Dark Bane. No, it doesn't. It does not. Look, what if you had an elf or something? It doesn't necessarily do.
Why do I have an elf if I'm playing Struggle to Survive?
I don't know. Why are you playing Struggle to Survive? And then
because it's Red Murder.
Yeah.
And then on the backside, you get Felden's Cane for both players for free, which is mildly disruptive to your opponent. And for your own strategy, when you're playing some kind of a deck that's thinning your land out, like, oh, I don't know, Hour of Promise, your deck becomes more concentrated with spells.
Doesn't that also apply to them?
No. They're not searching out all their lands. I don't know, man. I don't think Struggle to Survive is like A+ either.
Yeah,
I just think that it's decent.
I think mind having an Aftermath Survive. I would not likely ever use a card slot for it.
I think you're way underestimating Struggle. But for what it's worth, I do think that Struggle to Survive is like I mean, the biggest strike against it is that there are a million ways to kill a creature for 3 mana. There's just so many, right? Here's an interesting feature to Struggle to Survive. Let's say you're playing a format where somebody's milling you. Or let's say that you're playing a deck with a ton of self-mill. Having one Struggle to Survive in your 60 is like, it's a Felden's Cane that you can dredge into.
Sure.
That's something, right?
Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't mind playing Survive on the backhand, right? It's a free card, but yeah, no, I wouldn't want to invest a full card in the ability. That's all.
All right, what do you think about Appeal to Authority? Appeal is green sorcery. Until end of turn, target creature gets trample and +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures you control. And then Authority is 1 and a white, Aftermath. Tap up to 2 target creatures your opponents control. Creatures you control have vigilance until end of turn.
Ooh, I kind of like that one. Obviously, Appeal is at its best when you have a little bit of a swarm to give it +X/+X. And Authority, I don't think we have to think for very long to figure out times we might want this ability in a swarmy deck.
The fact that you can like go for the kill, you spend 3 mana and you just go Appeal one of your guys, preferably something with double strike, by the way, right? Like that dwarf Solemn Recruit. But anyway, you appeal to Authority. So you appeal one of your guys. You Authority. You remove both of your opponent's blockers. And now you get to just slam your opponent where you have a pump spell and they're missing 2 of their blockers all in one big hit.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I think you got to have some kind of a multiplier, though. I think you got to be doing something. You got to be doing something, whether it's infecting, double striking. You got to be doing something to get a multiplier on this appeal pump side. That's what I think. But what do I know? What do you think about Grind to Dust? 1 and a black sorcery. Put a -1/-1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And then the Dust Aftermath, 3 and a white. Exile any number of target creatures that have -1/-1 counters on them.
So this is obviously like the 6 mana super combo, right? That's how you're one way you're supposed to think about it. Even just on the grind side, it's not too inefficient. Like if your opponent has 2/2/1s or something, grind's pretty great.
Well, even if you just grind on turn 3 and you don't kill either creature, you can just grind. You're going to take 2 less damage on their turn, so it's like you know. And then on turn 4, you dust, and you get to kill 2 creatures. Exile, at least, and that's not even counting if they are like foolish enough to have any amount of Walking Ballista, Tireless Tracker, Rishkar, Pima Renegade. I think Grind to Dust looks great.
I agree. I think that it's got it has versatility and power both.
What if you put -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures for any other reason?
Well,
right? Like what if you have that Black Desert we spoke of earlier, the Ifnir Deadlands? Or what if you just cast 2 grinds and then you just have a Dust in the Chamber?
I mean,
I don't know, man.
It's just more of the same, right? Like you're synergying it up.
What about Grind to Dust in some kind of the Scorpion God deck?
Seems like a lot of setup. Might be worth it.
Now, obviously, grind or dust doesn't actually give you the Scorpion God's triggers, but at that point, you've got a lot of things going right.
Yeah, but it's still synergistic with what's going on.
Well, we might as well finish our little trek through of the aftermath cards here. What do you think of Refuse to Cooperate?
I refuse to cooperate with this card.
3 in a red, instant. Refuse deals damage to target spell's controller equal to that spell's converted mana cost. And then Cooperate, the aftermath is 2 in a blue, instant. Copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy.
I would play this card in a second in a lot of decks. First of all, just the refuse ability. There's so many times that you go through a format you just wish a card with this kind of effect existed, right? And then the cooperate part, you could just do cool stuff, right? Like cooperating a pull.
Well, I'm trying to understand what you mean. You're talking about you just wish that cooperate existed?
No, refuse existed. Refuse is a really powerful ability for a red deck, right? It's
right, like if you just have refuse, you can just when they cast their Chandra, that's 4, right? But that sometimes they go bigger. If you just hold up refuse, are they going to play their Glorybringer or their Archangel Avacyn or whatever?
Yeah, I think if this card is, in some contexts, be really, really outstanding.
And what was your thoughts on Cooperate?
I think Cooperate's also cool. I think that it's weird, though, because the decks that want Refuse won't be able to cast Cooperate. They would want Cooperate, but they wouldn't be able to cast it.
No, they can't. I mean, if they just have, like, Wandering Firmwell and Spirebluff Canal.
Maybe. Or maybe even just Aether Hub.
Yeah, because I just think that... Oh, so, like, when we had this card before, it was Geist Blast. 2 in a red, instant, deal 2 damage to target creature or player, and then you could pay 2 in a blue and exile Geist Blast from your graveyard to copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new copies for the target. So, there's 2 important differences here. The first is that Refuse is a way, way, way better front side than Geist, right? Like dealing 2 damage for 3 mana. Dealing 2 damage for 3 mana is like very medium minus. And then, whereas Refuse is like, at least in the negotiations, as a card you might play.
I mean, this card can just easily deal 10 or something, right? Like,
right.
If your opponent's casting an Ulamog or, like, I don't know, like, what if they're casting like a big life gain spell, just for sake of argument? They're casting like a Nissa's Renewal. You can refuse them and kill them before the Nissa's Renewal resolves, right?
Yeah.
So,
now, here's the important part, though. Cooperate, unlike Geist Blast, Cooperate can target your opponent's instants and sorceries. Anybody. So you can use Cooperate to counter your opponent's negate. You can use Cooperate. If your opponent tries to unlicensed Disintegration you, or like one of your creatures, you can go Refuse. They're going to take 3. Then Refuse goes to the graveyard. Then you Cooperate the unlicensed Disintegration and send 3 more back at them. That's 6 right there, and they're losing a creature too. Likewise, you can actually, if you have 2 different Refuse Cooperates, like you can have a Cooperate already in your graveyard, and you can go Refuse, and then you can copy your Refuse. And so if your opponent played a Sorin, suddenly they take 12, which I don't know why they're playing Sorin. You Cooperate in the graveyard. They should have played around it. But I think the fact that you can copy your opponent's stuff is a very interesting twist.
I agree.
Finally, Driven to Despair.
So, Driven to Despair, it's green on the front side, 1 and a G for a sorcery. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. The backside, Aftermath, is Despair, 1 and a B sorcery. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain Menace, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. Oh, so this is actually... You can make a magical Christmas land where this is the coolest thing, right? If you have 4 mana, you can just give all your guys Trample and Menace, and they're drawing cards, and the opponent's discarding cards. It's all going together nicely there. But
I mean, if you literally just go any 2-drop into any 3-drop, or another 2-drop, whatever, then on turn 4, you just go Driven to Despair, you draw 2 cards, your opponent discards 2 cards.
I think that's pretty powerful.
And that's just a relatively straightforward, you played anything, and then you play this on 4. This card has interactions in some kind of a cathartic reunion type of deck.
Oh, yeah.
This card has interactions in some kind of a token-based deck where you're trying to actually swarm your opponent relatively early on, because you can go, like, if you play a 1-drop and then a 1-drop, when you Driven on turn 3, you might draw 3 extra cards right there, and then you still have Despair just sitting there threatening to Mind Twist your opponent.
I think this card, it's not hard to think of awesome things you can do with it. But I also, having played all kinds of cards like this over the years, I think this is also the kind of card that tends to get cut before the final version of a deck hits the tables. Wouldn't it be great if, I think I'm very apprehensive about it.
You don't think somebody could use Driven to Despair in some kind of a mostly black, but with maybe 4 Hissing Quagmire, 4 Blooming Marsh, and then some other land in order to help enable, maybe Aether Hub, but to help enable a zombie deck? It's like a zombie deck that plays Driven, and sometimes it just discards it and despairs out of nowhere, so that, like, you Crypt Breaker on turn 4, and your opponent wasn't expecting to suddenly have to discard 3 cards. Boom.
Sure.
Or you just cast this thing. Or you just cast it. I mean, like, I don't know. This kind of card is usually not that good. But this card looks like it could be better than the ones like it usually are.
It gains a lot of its value when you already have a ton of guys.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not win more, but all I want to do is win even more. It's like, the only problem with this card is that Nico Bolas does not approve of the green cards. That's not how Nico Bolas rolls.
The only thing wrong with it. Nothing else.
All right, you got one more?
Sure.
Anything? You got something specific, or is there anywhere what?
The only thing I was thinking of is last week we were speculating about the Last God, and we didn't talk about it in specific, but it's been revealed. We can talk about the Scarab God. That's a thing we can do, or...
So the Scarab God is 3 blue-black for a 5/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control.
I mean, and then that's a powerful ability, right? You got, like, any number of zombies.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you're scrying and your opponent's losing that much life, it's like this is a zombie king in turn, like... Your opponent losing a life every turn for each of your zombies is, like, at least related, is, like, comparable to giving all your zombies +1. And then you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. That's better. That's often better than giving your zombies extra toughness. And then it also has the ability to blue-black, exile target creature card from a graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie.
So when you were talking before about can we cram a zombie sub-theme into the Hour of Promise deck, I think that, like, without even having... I think that the Scarab God deck could be the deck that has, like, all the zombie support cards and not a lot of the zombie card cards. Like, if you want to put those in a deck, I think it's more natural to go here. But I don't know, maybe... I don't think it's likely you're going to play those 2 cards together. They're both 5-drops. Kind of expensive to do so, but I think that's just that first ability on this card is potentially really impressive.
Yes, I don't know. I just don't think that this. Everybody's so high in this card. It might be just so sick. Oh, we also forgot when the Scarab God dies, return it to the owner's hand.
Oh yeah, of course. That's what they do.
It doesn't die either. Yeah.
I mean, like the Locust God and the Scorpion God both look to me like they have massive potential. I'm not 100% sure they're going to be played, right? But the Locust God is like really Niv-Mizzety. The Scorpion God is like it's really powerful, really grindy. I think the Scarab God's got a little of each.
Yeah, the Scarab God's got some appeal. Not sure the best thing to be copying, but you can copy your opponent's stuff though. Exile target creature card from a graveyard. That's pretty sick.
That's good.
I'm in for that.
He's also just a 5/5, almost impossible to kill for 5. So his like worst case scenario isn't that bad. God. I'm sorry?
No, his worst case scenario is not that bad. It's just that there's a lot of good zombie action for 5 mana.
Oh yeah, I mean, the opportunity cost is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, plus there's just these other gods, you know. Like you could play the Scorpion God or the Locust God. Like, why are you playing whichever god you're playing?
Last week we talked a bunch about the defeats. It's been pointed out to me on Twitter a bunch of times. The defeats are actually great against Nicol Bolas himself. Jace's defeat, Liliana's defeat, and Chandra's defeat.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Oh. Well, friends and enemies then. Both.
Okay. Well, there you go. Yes, Nicol Bolas. Nicol Bolas cuts both ways. Yeah, Nicol Bolas is. Although, okay, actually, there is one more card we should really talk about.
Yeah.
Horse Tribal. I'm just picturing Chris Bakul with like one of those horse masks, like just a horse head on his head.
Are you talking about Crested Sunmare?
Of course, 3 white, 5/5 horse. You can tell in the text.
Is it 5/5 horse for 5? Creature horse. Other horses you control indestructible. Really? Other horses.
Yeah. Oh,
At
good.
the beginning of each end step, if you gain life this turn, create a 5/5 white horse creature token. Man, that second line, though, makes the first line a lot less stupid. I don't know. Where would you want to play Crested Sunmare? If he got the indestructible, too, I mean, I think we might be talking, but...
Are you kidding?
If he was 5/5 indestructible for 5 that also made the horses, I think like he would be all over the place, man. How could you beat him?
Pretend he doesn't even have that ability. Just look at the other ability, man.
No. I think that he's going to be playable. I think that he's
playable,
killable. Yeah,
playable.
You think he's going to be super stable or something?
Okay, so let's say you just have your Aether Sphere Harvester.
Yeah.
This is just 10 of bodies, one half of which is indestructible, the other half of which is threatening to make another 5/5 next turn.
And he also does it on your opponent's turn, right? Potentially. At the beginning of each end step.
Right?
Like if they attack you and you block with a lifelinker or anything else.
What if you have a Shambling Vent?
I've had a Shambling Vent.
What if you have Gisela the Broken Blade or Glory-Bound Initiate?
I love that. I'm a little apprehensive about getting super excited about a 5-drop. He's a lot of things going for him, though.
What if you use any clone effect to copy this guy?
Oh, well, that's freaking awesome. I like cloning him.
This guy with Kalidas?
You're making him sound better and better. You really like? I don't know. You really like him?
Yeah, I do. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's the same casting cost as Archangel Avacyn.
Yeah, I mean,
the bar is high.
This guy's taking a terror, right? Like it's the old dead guy rule. Kill it. That's the old dead guy rule. If the card is remotely interesting, kill it.
Yeah, but what about Baneslayer Angel? This card is haste, sort of. Right, like you just attack. and your life flickers trigger, and then you drop this guy, and you have 10-10 already, and if they kill it, you still have a 5-5.
One of the things that's awesome about it, actually, is that if you ever get any triggers, right, you just get like one or two.
If you get one, you're miles ahead.
Like, that one is unkillable now. Like, you basically have Gideon, right? Like, if you get one. He doesn't lose Indestructible because... Oh, wait, does he? He does lose Indestructible if you lose Crested Sunmare, actually. The horse itself is not indestructible. It's the ability... the constant ability of Crested Sunmare that makes him indestructible. Alright, what I was saying is wrong. But it's still cool to get the horse.
Yeah! That's 10-10 for 5. That's like way more than Verdurous Gearhulk. So, and that's not even counting that this guy makes another horse next turn.
So I actually hadn't thought.
What if you cast Blessed Alliance? What if on your opponent's turn you just cast Blessed Alliance?
So if you just gain life for whatever, like attack with a creature land or whatever, and then you just cast Crested Sunmare, he's just pretty much better than Broodmate Dragon, right?
By a lot. He costs 5 instead of 6, and you have 10-10. And half of the bodies are making more bodies, and the other half are indestructible.
All right, so I think this card is a lot better than I thought of initially.
Okay.
I'm going to have to noodle about gaining life, though.
Dude, don't you want to gain life?
But Josh Ravitz once told me that, my predilection for life gain was like the biggest blind spot in my game. That was... I don't know. I think it's worth a thought. Do you think like super staple for this guy?
I don't know what super staple means. There's a lot of 5-drops. Verdurous Gearhulk isn't a super staple.
Like just like right there in the metagame. Like,
but this card might. I mean, this
5 and white. He's hitting it.
Dude, I think that this card is like. I think this card is with the caveat. And I don't just mean this is sort of like couching or whatever. There's just an outrageous number of really powerful 5s, and most of them can't be the right ones to play in any one time, right? This looks to me, and it's all a function of the support, which cards that there is alongside it. But this card looks to me like it should be like in the same league as things like Verdurous Gearhulk. Like, what about this card with Renewed Faith?
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of cards that you might want to play with it.
Being able to Renewed Faith and cycle on your opponent's turn to gain 2 life so that you have 15-50. This card is just, like, unbelievable if they don't have removal. And even if they have removal on their own turn, if you just got to end your turn, you'll have 10-10 so often. And it's not trivial to play with life gain. That's not nothing. It's just that it's also not trivial to play with some of the other super powerful 5s. It's a question of whether it fits into the rest of your strategy, which is part of the reason why it ends up being a question of what other support there is. This card is one to keep an eye on because if there's any reasonable amount of life gaining, particularly if there's any kind of like creatures that let you any good, like a good rate creature that lets you like tap to gain a life on your opponent's turn without spending any mana.
Sure. Yeah, I think the fact that it triggers on both players' turns is just one of the selling points. Yeah.
I think that this is like there's just so much body going on here. This card looks really exciting to me.
All right.
I don't know. I think this one is. I'm going to be keeping a close eye for what kind of life gain support there's going to be, but. There's also one tiny little piece of the equation that we haven't necessarily factored in. If you just put this down, you can make your Nightmare indestructible. You can make your Ghoul Steed indestructible. Dude, Horse Tribal.
On that note, this has been yet another great episode of Top of the Podcast. Hope you liked it. We are Top of a Podcast on our website, topofapodcast.com, on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, on Patreon. Jeremy Vane Tempest, just want to shout out to Jeremy. Thanks for supporting us on Patreon. Thanks to all our patrons, and thanks to you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Dear listeners, for listening and sharing our podcast. We love doing it every week for all y'all.
Tarpan in Legacy.
What about like the Trojan horse guy? Is that a what's the name of that one?
Yeah, you don't want to give your opponent an indestructible crow and horse.
No,
that's
not a combo. No, Wilbur.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, so jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive. The game, the love, it kept me alive. Visions of better weather, light inside.